This happened to me over a decade ago now. It's crazy to think just how much time has flown by. I'm going to keep details to a minimum and slightly vague to try and protect my identity, but in reality, I think if someone actually knows me in real life, they will work it out from this post. I just have to hope that no one that I know uses this site. I will start by saying that I was in a SWAT entry team in a pretty big city in the United States, and I was there for around 9 years or so. That doesn't include the intense training that you go through, or the amount of time I spent as a beat cop beforehand and what have you. But I don't want to bog down the story when there is already so much to explain, and even things that I don't think I can explain. Anyway, there is one call that we received around 16 years ago, so around 2010, that still really irks me, and that I still do not have the full picture of. It's gonna sound insane, but please try to bear with me. So I was actually in my mid-30s when this happened, and I had already gotten to the point where I thought I had seen it all on the job. I've been deployed in a team to deal with active shooter situations, potential hostage scenarios, etc. I don't even say it to sound tough. This job is a grueling one and sapped away at my psyche for years. I've had to make tough, split-second decisions and even take someone else's life just to defend myself. Not every call is as extreme as that. Sometimes it's a lot of waiting around in a van and sweating your ass off, or holding a position with a rifle and praying to God you don't blink a second too early and fuck everything up. I swear, that job aged me twice as fast as any other job. Most of the action is over in just seconds. That's usually the best case scenario. Even from minute one, this call started out really badly, and from the initial report, we knew that things might go south. A patrol was dispatched to an apartment because the neighbors reported what sounded like a woman screaming for her life, like full-blown yells at the top of her lungs until her voice broke or gave out. They said they also heard lots of banging and what sounded like a deep male voice. When the patrol got to the building, they immediately reported hearing gunshots. They were told to wait, but one of the responding officers feared that it would be too late. He reported that he could hear people inside, but that no one would open the door. Someone inside apparently yelled to the officer that if he did not back away and give them a chance to leave, then they would start killing people. That sounded like hostages. We were already well on the way. The building was downtown and was an older place, one of those mid-rises, but it had not been renovated in a long time and was starting to degrade. There wasn't a single non-dirty window in sight, and the entire inside smelled like someone had tried to mask dirty socks and gym sweat with copious amounts of deodorant. The specific apartment was actually on the first floor and was a corner unit. There was only one guy on the lease who was in his 40s or something and lived alone. He had no listed wife or kids or even roommates. He didn't have a record of any kind. He was squeaky clean, invisible even. Building management after the fact said that he was a quiet guy and that he was not often seen. In fact, he was only ever seen when paying rent, never left for a job of any kind or even to grab any groceries. When one of the neighbors was interviewed after everything went down, she reported that delivery drivers would arrive at weird hours of the night with these crates of stuff. She said that she could never see what was inside, but it was just these massive, massive containers making rattling sounds and waking her up only a few hours before she had to go to work. We got staged in the hallway pretty quickly. I could not hear a single sound coming from that apartment. I could not hear so much as a TV on in the background, or even any breathing or walking around. Although, that's a lie, actually. Now that I think about it, I could hear this low, humming sound. It sounded like a pretty big chest freezer or something. Just that kind of mechanical buzz, or however you would describe it, the buzz of electricity. One of our guys in the hallway was using a thermal device. I'm not a tech guy, so I will probably explain this all badly, but apparently, he wanted us to delay our entry while he checked something. He said that something was not adding up, and that it looked like there were way more heat signatures in the apartment than was reported. We believe there to be the one occupant plus the screaming woman. but there were probably around closer to 10 people somewhere in the very back of the apartment, and they were low to the ground, either sitting or laying down if I had to hazard a guess. He said it looked like they were all fairly close together, like shoulder to shoulder. What made it even stranger was that we had the exact floor plan of this apartment. It was 2 bedrooms with a living room, a tiny kitchen, and a small bathroom. A small utility closet too, in which I think the boiler was. Like I said, this was a much older place. But these thermals were coming from much further back than the layout would allow for. At least, that's what it looked like. We couldn't really tell properly. I was incredibly worried at this point. From what we could see, there was no way to tell whether they may be additional assailants or hostages. We had to prepare for both scenarios. We had a negotiator try to contact them. A force breach was our last resort, as we wanted to ensure the safety of the people inside if they were indeed hostages. It took a few attempts for them to even pick up, and even when they did, the guy on the line was refusing to come outside. He was asking to be allowed to leave, otherwise he would kill everyone. He heard someone else on the line in a hushed tone saying, "Leave it, man. It's done. It's over. Just cut them loose." The man hung up right after that. There was a woman in the apartment down the hall trying to come outside, and someone had to stop her and force her back inside. She was crying and said that she had a baby who couldn't sleep. We tried to reassure her, but man, she was in a panic. Said that she had been hearing weird sounds in the vents for weeks and just wanted it to stop. I mean, what the hell was she thinking? She actually had the baby in her hands when she came outside. Why would you do that in the middle of all of this? We had to breach quickly with a ram. We did not have any more time to sit and wait for the higher-ups or the negotiator. We could hear pounding footsteps inside, and there was a chemical smell wafting underneath the door, bleach or something. I think I was the 3rd or 4th man in the stack. We cleared the place pretty quickly and was able to apprehend the man who had the lease. The apartment was just completely stripped bare. Couches, rugs, TV, curtains, etc. All of them were stripped out of the room. There was just nothing at all, not even a rug. There was just this black masking tape taped over all of the windows. It was like taped multiple times so that it was really thick in places to block all of the lights out the windows. The apartment was really, really cold, unusually so, especially for the time of year. I could feel a breeze flowing from somewhere. There were plastic sheets taped over the vents, and there were sheets and cling film put down over all of the floor and on the kitchen counters. There were stains on pretty much all of them, very old stains. That humming sound was even louder now and sounded like it was behind one of the rooms. Within seconds, the man who had the lease, he was down on his knees and just sobbing and begging us, kept saying he had to and stuff like that. Bullshit. I had no sympathy for him. He knew exactly what he was doing, despite him pleading with us and telling us that he had no choice, and that if he didn't, then it would be him, is what he said to us. We had him face down and in cuffs pretty quickly, and he did not even make an attempt to fight back. Once he was in cuffs, he just clammed up and would not answer any questions. It was like he just flicked a switch and turned off his tears and was now just following a script. We found shit in the bedroom, but it was clear that they had managed to dump some stuff. There was a laptop that looked to have been smashed with a hammer. They were prepaid phones that had the same done to them. Forensics later found traces of numerous drugs in the apartment, but they never found a stash anywhere. There were tons of medical supplies stashed everywhere. There were plastic disposable gloves, lots of cleaning supplies like bleach. There was also tons of gauze and syringes, and even other medical equipment. They had a damn heart rate monitor and even an IV drip set up. The bathroom door was locked from the outside with a slide bolt. I remember that because one of our guys kicked it open and found 3 people sitting in the bathtub with their hands zip-tied in front of them. 2 women and 1 man. All adults, I think. It was hard to tell ages. They were so thin and bruised up that everyone looked both young and old at the same time. One of the women started making this breathy sound like she was trying to scream but couldn't really get the noise out. None of them spoke English, none whatsoever. The man had tape residue around his mouth and bruises around both eyes. He kept blinking and his eyes were watering, like our flashlights were hurting his eyes, like he wasn't used to the light. That should have been it, but we could not find a trace of the woman who was reported to have been screaming. She was screaming in English, so it clearly was not one of the people in the bathroom. Not only that, but the thermals still were not adding up. The second bedroom was locked with a key deadbolt, which for an interior bedroom door is kind of insane. When we forced it open, we saw that there was a big mattress shoved on the floor. This thing also had old stains seeped into it. Blood, if I had to take a guess. There were actually what looked like shackles near the top where a headboard would be that were really rusted. There were also more medical supplies and also buckets placed around the room. Just plain black ones with the handle. They had God knows what inside of them. All I know is they smelled like puke and something else, and one of our guys was gagging and had to leave that room. There were mounds of flies crawling over the ledge near the window, and they looked to be festering near the buckets and other places too. There were also maggots in some parts of the room. There was also this huge metal shelving unit pushed against the far wall that looked to have lots of medical tools on top of it. There were scalpels, more syringes, and the like, as well as other more general tools like screwdrivers and wrenches. They all looked brand new and like they had been sterilized recently. They were the opposite to the state of the room. The thermals were pointing towards more heat signatures somewhere near this room. It did not take long for our team leader to work out that there were some pretty heavy scratch marks piercing into the wood near the bottom. It was obvious someone had been dragging it to and from this wall multiple times. I helped another one of our guys to pull it, and it did not budge at first. Turns out that there were 2 latch points that were hidden that we just had to cut through. The whole shelving unit just swung out like a door immediately when we did. We found a hole cut out into the damn drywall. It was like a cave entrance with how low and small to the ground it was. We shouted for people to come outside, but no one would respond, so we actually had to smash open more parts of the wall just to make a bigger path for us to enter. No way we were going to crawl one by one into that place. It was much too big of a safety risk. I remember that once we got inside and I shined my flashlight, I could see multiple eyes all just watching me. Everybody was staring at me, but just sitting there and not moving. It was even colder inside here. This was definitely where the humming was coming from. We pulled around 7 people out of there, if I remember correctly, but we couldn't ID any of them as the woman who was screaming. Again, all of them had really thick accents and could not speak English whatsoever. The person who reported it to the police, they reported distinctly it was a woman who was saying English, fluent English, with no accent. Most of the people that we pulled out of there could not even really walk properly and had to be helped along. One of them looked to have a really infected leg. It looked like his leg had been shot or cut open and had gotten infected and become gangrenous. He was a sickly pale color, and he seemed to be having a lot of trouble breathing. He was one of just a couple of deaths that we had that day. He had clearly been on death's door for a while and passed away from the infection en route to the hospital. All of their clothes were torn and filthy. None of them had any shoes, and not a single one of them could speak English to tell us what had gone on and what happened here, where they were from, etc. I think they were interviewed later with a translator, but I was not present for that, or told about what they had said. One of the guys that was in there had this metal collar around his neck that was attached to a little metal box. I have no idea what it was for. It looked like animal control gear. A few of them had these thick, padded mitts taped around their hands too. They had clearly been abused. They had bruises and cuts all on their wrists and ankles and such. A lot of them had scars from some kind of knife or sharp object. One of them even had burn marks going all along their spine. It looked like a branding gone wrong, but I just don't understand for what purpose. Just why? The same one with the burns. He had a feeding tube taped around his face with the same black tape that was used in the windows, but it was done really poorly and was not even connected to anything anymore. The crawl space itself went a little further. Let me reiterate, this is an old-ass apartment complex. There should not have been any space for any of this unless it was already on the plans and constructed when the complex was built. It should have ended probably at the exterior wall, but it looked like the path bent to the left. It looked like it actually descended, possibly to some kind of a basement. Again, it wasn't on the plans. I'm not sure. All I know is that there was a freezer in there. That was the source of the humming. It was like one of those industrial walk-in freezers, only a lot smaller than you might imagine at first, and was clearly custom constructed to fit into this space specifically. It did not have any branding or anything like that. It still should not have fit into the space, even with that. Surely someone should have noticed how much power was being drawn from this apartment and shut it down. When I opened up the freezer, I found a body inside. It was a young kid. I had to leave immediately because it made me think of my young boy, and I just wanted to cry. All I can tell you is that he had not been dead for very long at all. It probably happened just before we got there, probably that very day, if I were to guess. It still hurts to think about, that maybe we could have saved his life. He was shirtless and looked incredibly pale and malnourished. He had this long scar going from just underneath his nipple all the way down to the bottom of his stomach. He had clearly been cut open and then sewn back up. You're probably thinking that all of that was bad enough, but it did not even end there. I wish that it did. I called attention to the freezer and the crawl space, and once we had pulled more people outside, we had a few more people just doing a cursory clear. But this guy popped out. He came out of the damn freezer. I don't know how I missed him or why he didn't kill me right then and there. I was so focused on not seeing that dead boy that I almost got one of our guys killed. He had a gun drawn and was screaming, and he fired off one round before he got put down. Luckily he missed and hit the ceiling above the head of the guy who shot him. My guess is he was not able to get out of the building in time through whatever weird entrance they were using. I did not see any of this go down personally. All I saw was the aftermath. I was still reeling at that point. That asshole that we detained, he still was not talking. He was like a damn robot now. He did not so much as flinch. We did not get to go deeper. That's the part that makes me angriest. We had an active scene with victims still possibly inside somewhere, and someone above us made the call to hold position. At the time, I thought it was because of the shooting and the unknown layout. That would have made sense. We almost lost one man already, and taking such a big risk is always a no-no. But people arrived pretty quickly and basically just shut us out. I know it sounds stupid and cliche, but that is what happened, I swear on my life. I was not in a position to deal with anything else, so while I was angry, I did think it was for the best. There were lots of fed-looking guys in suits with badges. I didn't really take everything in. I was asked to leave, and I did what I was told to do. I helped EMS take a few people into the ambulance and figure out who needed immediate medical attention. After that, I was told to just go home and rest, and boy, did I need it. I fell asleep on the couch the second that I got through the door. I forgot to mention, but they took my body camera before I left, like, immediately, one of the feds. I thought it was odd, but I figured with this being such a high-profile thing, with it potentially occurring across state lines or national lines, that they wanted to act very, very quickly. We were instructed not to discuss the case, which is also pretty standard. I woke up after a couple of hours to my phone going off. There was apparently a mix-up, and I needed to head straight back in, which I did. They needed to speak to me urgently and give a statement, and then write up my report. I basically told them to a T what I told you here. I was in there for a while with them grilling me. I remember my buddy who was there that day telling me that the victims who were not critical got taken out the back in a service elevator with blankets over their heads. Apparently, it was to keep their identities hidden due to the nature of the case and for their safety. It was all new to me. I'd never experienced a situation like this before. It seemed odd, but I thought maybe that was just the way these things were handled. Our officers, as well as the police, had to keep people in their apartments for hours, even though they were begging to leave. It caused quite a commotion, and the people were not happy. When I was being grilled, I remember them asking me multiple times whether anyone spoke to me or told me anything. I kept saying no, because they did not speak English. I don't know, it just seemed odd, given that they obviously already knew the situation. The case was obviously sealed due to an ongoing investigation into a possible trafficking organization, so I never found out anything more. Even to this day, I don't think it was ever mentioned on the news or in any papers due to the nature of the investigation and how it could ruin the apprehension of other persons involved. This case still fucks with me to this day. I tried not to think about it for a long time, but the image of that kid, I still see him in my head. I just don't understand how something like that could have been allowed to happen for so long. For all of that, it must have taken either major incompetence at multiple levels, or, and I dread to think, a lot of underhanded compliance. Surely someone on some level must have noticed something before that day. I don't know, man. I don't think I will ever get an answer that gets that sinking feeling out of my gut. This happened to me while I was camping in North Dakota, on a dried-up lake bed / mudflat. The trip had been mostly ordinary stuff. I spent much of my time waiting for buffalo to get out of the road instead of actually driving. The campground was set up at the bottom of a steep ridge to the south, but came in from the north. I can see the entire campground. Nobody is even there yet. It would just be me and my dog for the night. I set up the camp, leave my dog to guard the campsite, then I blast off to go and get some firewood from the local camp warden just as night falls. When I come back, my dog is not in plain sight. We've gone camping together dozens of times, and he knows protocol. He would not just leave like that. I hear whimpering. It's coming from inside the tent. I open up my tent. My dog is inside, with his tail between his legs, but still wagging, with his ears down. The dog must have opened up the tent and closed it again somehow. My dog was never too bright at understanding things like doors and drawers, so I'm wondering how he even managed to do that. I let him out. He's walking around, still with his tail between his legs and wagging, occasionally stopping to stare at the ridge. I ignore my dog because acting worried just makes the dogs more angsty. I drink a little. The stars start to come outside, and I'm the only one at the entire campground, so I light up. I hear a repressed chuckle. I instantly tweak and walk around. There could not possibly be another human here. I can't work out where I heard that chuckle coming from. There are no trees, no rocks, no nothing. There's just the ridge, 300 meters or so to the south, stretching east and west, and endless mudflats that stretch north into the Badlands, where spiky rock formations dotted the distant horizon. There was a half-dozen wooden kiosks for protection from the Dakotan sun, but you could not possibly conceal yourself behind one. It's probably just some gear settling in the car, is what I tell myself, but that's obviously not what it was. Fast forward a little while and I am dozing off. I jostle awake to a snort. I look up. There is a buffalo sniffing my car. I jump up and yell, then yell in surprise. A buffalo herd snuck down the ridge and invaded the campground. It's encircling my tent and my car passively. My dog is freaked out and clinging to my side, but he is absolutely silent. I'm afraid he'd bark and scare a buffalo and cause something bad to happen. I bring him into the tent again. I piss out the low embers and start to finish the bowl I had packed earlier. I start to hear a murmur. Buffalo do not make that sound. I am just holding the bowl, and as I do, I hear a clear snickering. I'm getting pissed off now, so I am looking around, trying to figure out what is making that noise. There are just buffalo standing around and snoozing outside of my campsite. I imagine some goons dressed up as buffalo out in the wilderness to scare some poor camper, and I laugh a little. I'm probably just imagining things. I'm probably just so stressed, my mind is making things up. I go into the tent. The dog licks my ear and lets out a contented whine. I tuck him underneath my arm and roll up in my blanket. My dog feels safe, so I feel safe. I hear some rustling near my tent, but I can't see outside because I always put on my rain tarp despite the weather. It always seems to rain on me. I hear footsteps, soft feet with toes, not hooves. What the fuck? I swear to God, I am hearing whispering coming from somewhere. I yell outside, "Get the hell away from me, I have a gun." I did, in fear of strangers. The noise stops, I hear nothing. I poke my head out of the tent, look around. All of the buffalo are just gone. What? I back into my tent, I shrug it off. I continue hugging my dog, and then I finally fall asleep. I dream that I'm running through the mud flats barefoot, surrounded by laughter. I jolt awake again. Something is messing with the tent zipper. Now I'm just too scared to move. I've heard some legend about Native American spirits harassing white people on cloudless nights in the Badlands. The zipper opens just an inch. The dog wakes up and starts growling, looking right at the door. My bull starts squeezing through the gap. I am both paralyzed and intrigued. The bull pops through. The zipper shuts immediately. I hear no footsteps, no laughter, no nothing. I grab my gun, I rip open the zipper, and I jump outside. I brandish it and scan around. I'm like, come on, come and fuck with me. Come here, right now. I hear nothing but a slight breeze. I circle the car, then the tent, then the entire campsite. There is nothing. The only tracks were mine, my dog's, and some hooves. I go back inside the tent. My dog is waiting and not doing jack shit as always. The bull is still by the door. I am almost afraid to touch it by this point. I'm pretty sure I had packed it away after using it. There is something actually inside the bowl that I can see. I don't even know. It's like some kind of thick liquid, black, like mucus or, I don't know, like really thick blood. It's just all over it, like someone had just stood there drooling. That's the last encounter I had that night. I still don't know what the fuck was going on. Let me just start by saying that I'm a very rational and logical person. It's been quite a while since I've been on this website. I've been looking around, reading thread after thread, just wasting time, trying to get a good note feeling. Fast forward to this morning, I get a call from my sister in Cali. We talk for about 20 minutes, catching up on what's going on in each other's lives and planning for future get-togethers. Seemingly out of the blue, she brings up this trip that we took as kids in Mexico to visit some family. I get a flashback to that trip, and I remember seeing something that terrified the shit out of me back then. It goes kind of like this. I was about 14 years old when this happened in Michoacan with my parents and my 17-year-old sister. We are visiting aunts and uncles and my cousins that I don't really care about. All 5 of them live in a very wooded area in a shitty shack. To avoid shitty shack depression, we decide to head into the city. All of us go, so we take 2 vehicles since there are 9 of us now. Everyone buys souvenirs. The sun is going down. The owner of the shitty shack decides it's time to leave. The second driver had wandered off during our shopping trip and was not back yet. The shitty shack owner looks nervous and tells all of us to get in his truck. My mom rides inside the truck. Everyone else is in the bed. It was about a 20-minute drive to get back to the shack. There are lots of potholes, so we drive pretty slow. The sun is down now. I notice everyone in the truck looking in the same direction. No one is talking whatsoever. Through the trees, I can see silhouettes, moving. There had to be at least 10 of them that I could see. All of them looked impossibly small. They all moved on 2 legs like men. They were too far away, so I could not really make out all of the details. No one talks for the rest of the drive. We get to the shack, and my 3 cousins, they just they start bawling. My dad, as white as a ghost, goes to talk to the shack owner. My sister stayed quiet all night long. We headed home the very next day. Nobody in my family has talked about it again, and no one will tell me what happened. My father especially will not tell me what was out there. What did we see? Has anyone else here seen anything similar?